Welcome to the program. Global Weekly News, serial number 104. First, military personnel on movement for Palestine in US. On 25th February, US Air Force member Yaron Bushnell became the first active duty US soldier to earn the title of martyr among oppressed people worldwide. 25-year-old Bushnell set himself on fire in front of the Israeli embassy in Washington DC in protest of the US government's complicity in the genocide in Gaza. The sacrifice of Bushnell signaled an enormous sea change among duty military as well as veterans who are increasingly taking a bold step to denounce their government's involvement in genocide. Dozens of active duty US soldiers are quitting, leaving the US military over Gaza. Anti-war momentum in the US Air Force, which has more of a direct role in all the logistics that Israel needs to carry out genocide, is significant. Shortly after Bushnell's self-immolation, veterans of the Vietnam, Iraq, Afghanistan wars organized an action in Portland in which the former US military members burnt their uniforms collectively in protest. This type of action was later repeated throughout the country as other veterans and active duty military drew inspiration from the momentum. Veterans in Portland recently organized a massive projections of anti-war imagery on a US Navy warship. The images had slogans such as "Stop the US war machine" and "Blood is on your hands." A contingent of veterans attended the recent 1 lakh strong protest in front of the White House on 8th June. Military recruiters in the US, White House, military recruiters in the US look upon the working class and oppressed youth to lead them into military careers, luring them with the promises of free college education. They risk their life and participate in the imperialist war. Instead of a single soldier resisting, if a squad or a company together say they will not participate in the imperialist war, there is not much that the army can do. Second, lessons from Cuba visit by a US group. Amanda Yee, a journalist and managing editor of Liberation News, went to Cuba as part of a 20-person delegation to deliver $60,000 in critical life-saving cancer medications and medical supplies to 2 pediatric hospitals there. The delegation was organized by a volunteer-run organization which regularly brings medical and humanitarian aid to Cuba. As part of the 10-day trip, they met with representatives of different Cuban organizations, institutions, and even members of parliament. Through these exchanges, they learnt about how the Cuban people are affected by US policies and how they relentlessly pursue the project of building socialism. The delegation learnt 3 key lessons which are as follows. First, the US blockade on Cuba for over 60 years is an act of economic warfare. The political motivations behind it is to make life so miserable in Cuba that the Cuban people will direct their frustrations against the Communist Party and overthrow it, making way for US business interests to take hold again. The blockade has led to extreme shortages in food, flour and fuel. Electrical blackouts are becoming more and more frequent. Farmers cannot grow food on a mass scale because the blockade denies them the pesticides, fertilizers and equipment to do so. Many have relied on countries such as Mexico donating tractors, hooves and other farm supplies. The blockade creates overlapping crises with which everyday Cubans must contend. So the blockade is creating one and all in Cuba. This is the cruel price that the Cuban people continue to pay for their socialist project. Comrades, second, the parliament members in Cuba do not receive a salary. They do not conduct election campaigns, nor they receive campaign funding. Popular consultations between government officials and community members is an important democratic principle in Cuba. After debates and refinement, the new family code was passed in 2022. Cuba shows us that another world is possible, and one that centers humanity and dignity of life over profit. Third lesson, the Cuban people remain so determined to defend the gains of the revolution. They maintain their sense of revolutionary optimism even under the most severe conditions. This message is a great boost to US left and progressive forces to fight against the imperialist policies from within its belly. Third, US workers demand relief from excessive heat. Service industry workers speak out against low-wage, life-threatening work and demand safety measures to be implemented immediately. On 18th June, workers from chain service stores, including Popeyes and Family Dollar, held rallies in Atlanta, Charleston and Durham to demand relief from extreme heat conditions. They also filed a complaint with the Public Worker Safety Agency, Occupational Safety and Health Administration, OSHA. The workers are members of the Union of Southern Service Workers. They demand a safe work environment. They demand provisions of effective air conditioning, water and water breaks, etc. When the workers take breaks for drinks or rest, they get reprimanded. They are constantly sweating. Workers faint also in the workplace. Fourth, we go to Brazil. On 15th June, a demonstration against the bill that criminalizes legal abortion, dubbed the Child Pregnancy Bill, was held in Sao Paulo. The bill punishes those who provide abortions as well as the woman receiving the abortion with the same sentence applied in homicide cases, even for abortion procedures allowed by Brazil's legislation. The right-wing extremists are putting this bill on the agenda when there are so many problems to be resolved in Brazil. The bill establishes a punishment of 6 to 20 years in prison for abortions carried out over 22 weeks of pregnancy. A slightly smaller sentence is applied for abortions as a result of rape from 6 to 10 years. The bill was dubbed the Child Pregnancy Bill because it affects mainly child rape victims. In 2022, they accounted for more than 60% of the victims of this type of crime, which most often takes place at home and is perpetrated by family members. People's movements, women's rights organizations, and the population in general condemn the agreement between the Evangelical Caucus and the President of the Chamber of Deputies. The bill is not to save life, but as a process to destabilize the Lula da Silva government. All over Brazil, the demand of withdrawal of the bill is on high pitch. Next items, comrades, migrants die in the Mediterranean Sea. The Mediterranean Sea remains one of the world's biggest graveyard due to the immigration policies of the European Union. Border control and Coast Guard services deliberately delay rescue operations whenever the immigrant ships' boats get damaged in mid-sea. Recently, one boat was en route from Turkey to Italy, carrying 70 people on board. Though the hotline alarm phone supporting people lost at sea forwarded a distress call to the Italian Coast Guard on 16th June, yet the agency reacted only hours after that. Meanwhile, dozens were lost at the sea, among them over 20 children. Another boat transporting more than 60 people from Libya to Italy. 10 passengers drowned in the sea. Those on board, including people from Egypt, Syria and Pakistan, had paid $3,500 each for the trip. The absence of pushbacks by the Greek coast guard caused the death of at least 43 people between 2020 and 2023. Migrants are beaten and thrown into the sea without life jackets or with their hands tied behind their backs. In June 2023, due to a shipwreck, only 100 out of 750 passengers survived. All are immigrants. Close to 67,000 migrants reached Europe by sea in the first half of this year. At least 600 people died while trying to enter the European Union. Most people travel in extremely dangerous conditions, traveling in old, rusty ships or even sailboats in an attempt to flee war, occupation and poverty. Comrades, now next, dengue spreads in Europe. Dengue disease. An increase in local dengue transmissions reported by European Union public health agencies has raised concerns about outbreak risk as climate change makes the region more suitable for Aedes mosquitoes. The European region has seen an increase in both imported cases and local transmissions, suggesting that the virus may become endemic again after almost 100 years. Dengue can range from mild flu-like symptoms to severe life-threatening illness. 39 crore people get affected by dengue every year. Currently, no treatments exist for dengue. In 2010 to 21, only 73 local cases were reported. Imported cases have also risen, partly due to the severe outbreaks in Latin America and the Caribbean, including Argentina, Brazil, Martinique and Guadeloupe. In 2023, Europe recorded 130 locally transmitted dengue cases. These outbreaks highlight the urgent need to both strengthen public health services and develop effective treatment for dengue. If dengue cases increase in the global north, pharmaceutical companies might finally prioritize developing treatments and vaccines for dengue. The new resources may be hoarded by high-income countries. Low-income countries will suffer again as during the COVID-19 period. Next, comrades, a summit took place in Switzerland on Ukraine peace. Let us look into it. Last week, Ukraine Peace Conference took place in Switzerland for 2 days. Representatives came from 90 countries. High-level participation mostly from European countries, with most other countries represented by ministers or low-level officials. The US was represented by its Vice President Kamala Harris. Key global South countries refused to sign the joint communique issued at the end of the summit. Many of them underlined the need for Russian participation in any such initiative for them to be credible. Countries such as Indonesia, Thailand, Mexico and BRICS members, India, South Africa, Brazil, Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, did not agree to what was outlined in the communique. Russia was not invited to join the summit. It had already rejected the outcome. President Vladimir Putin said that the summit is an attempt by the Western countries to divert the world's attention away from the root causes of the conflict. China was invited but refused to participate. It claimed that the summit would not be productive without the presence of Russia. Out of 90 countries, 78 signed in the joint communique. The majority of those who signed are Western countries and their close allies such as Japan, Argentina and Chile. Iraq and Jordan withdrew their signature after their first signing it. The final document talks about the cessation of hostilities, withdrawal of Russian troops from all Ukrainian territories and restoration of the pre-war border with Russia without referring to threats to Russia on security due to the expansion of NATO. Putin presented his country's counter-proposal for peace the day before the conference was to begin. Putin demanded that Ukraine withdraw from 4 Ukrainian provinces annexed by Russia, namely Donetsk, Lugansk, Zaporozhye and Kherson, denuclearization of Ukraine, and the lifting of all sanctions against Russia imposed by the Western countries. Putin called it a concrete and real peace proposal. Putin also demanded that the rights and freedoms of the Russian-speaking people inside Ukraine must be fully ensured. Due to provocations by the West, Ukraine war continues and peace is not restored. Next comes an important development. Russia, North Korea signed partnership agreement. Russia-North Korea agreement. Russia and North Korea pledge to assist each other militarily against foreign aggression as US escalates military drills in Korean Peninsula. As a result of June 19 talks, Russia and North Korea have signed a comprehensive strategic partnership agreement. Russia also denounced the indefinite restrictions regime of sanctions imposed on the Democratic People's Republic of Korea by the United Nations. Overused Western propaganda can no longer hide their aggressive geopolitical intentions, Putin said in signing the agreement. The Democratic People's Republic of Korea re-emphasizes its support for Russia in the war in Ukraine. Putin's visit to North Korea was first in 24 years. He wrote an article emphasizing the importance of Russia-North Korea relationships to the new multipolar world order that Russia is pursuing. The comprehensive strategic partnership agreement with North Korea is also one step higher than the strategic partnership Russia signed with South Korea in 2008. Then comrades, we go to Kenya. The Finance Bill 2024, officially published by the National Assembly on 9th May this year 2024, outlines the government of Kenya's proposed tax measures for the financial year 2024-25. Among the numerous changes proposed are significant amendments to income tax, value-added tax and excise duty, as well as modifications to the administration of taxes in Kenya. One of the most contentious proposals in the bill is the imposition of 16% value-added tax on financial transactions and among basic commodities. Many people believe this bill will worsen their financial hardships. On 18th June, the streets of Kenya's capital Nairobi were the site of a major showdown as peaceful hundreds of protesters advocating for the rejection of the Finance Bill 2024 were met with brutal repression by state forces. 300 to 400 protesters were arrested. The tension and public dissent exerted considerable pressure on the government. Kenya's President William Ruto announced some compromises in the bill. Certain proposed taxes, including those on cooking oil, mobile money services and motor vehicles, were withdrawn. Still, people are not satisfied. The Finance Bill 2024 has a backing from the IMF. Unlike past protests that were primarily mobilized by opposition party, these demonstrations this time have been driven by different organizations and particularly on online platforms. The middle class groups also participated in more numbers. Lastly, comrades, we go to Colombia, South American country. The approval of the progressive pension reform was celebrated by the Colombian president as an important social conquest. On 14th June, Gustavo Petro's government achieved an important victory in the House of Representatives with 82 votes in favor and 23 against. Pension reform was approved. The retirement age in Colombia is 63 for men and 57 for women. In order to be able to retire with pension and all that, men must contribute for 1,000 weeks while women must contribute for 1,000 weeks. In addition, for each child, women will be able to reduce their contributions by 50 weeks. Supposing a woman has 3 children, then she has to work for 850 weeks. The pension reform will allow Colombia, like Switzerland, Denmark, Japan, to improve and give all Colombians dignified protection for their retirement. Communist Party of Colombia has welcomed the pension reforms. Thank you, comrades. Wassalam. See you next time.